Most iconic moments in rugby can be distilled down to one image. South Africa's Invictus and that victory from 1995 is forever this photo of Nelson Mandela in the 6 shirt, despite the fact he was clearly a French-style game-breaking number 9. The joyous Fijian Olympic Sevens victory boiled down to this, although a shout-out deserves to go to the accompanying banknote. England taking the world in 2003? This is the one, Johnny Wilkinson. He drops for World Cup glory. Rugby's other true superstar, the biggest name the game's ever had. Career was summed up by one photo. And more recently, the goosebumps moment Sia Khaleesi lifted the World Cup was so rudely overshadowed by the image that most of us can't unsee every single time we close our eyes. As such, the only thing preventing Scotland's historic raid of Twickenham for the first time in 38 years, a gap spanning the entire professional era and the lifetime of every player on the pitch in the tournament, from entering the hallowed halls adorned by images of George North carrying Israel Folau so far backwards Folau might catch up with his views, is that it gave us too many images, each one just waiting to go down in rugby union history. We have Stuart Hogg shaking his head in disbelief as he comes to terms with what Scotland have done. We have Hamish the Mish Watson turning the ball over and then somehow jumping into the arms of a teammate without bouncing them all the way to the far extremes of Richmond. We have Duan van der Merwe's try so phenomenally well finished that Finn Russell setting a new fashion trend. I don't know why, but I really enjoyed this photo of Ali Price. The cheeky grin Russell gives as he realises his audacious trip has been caught by the TMO. There's Hogg grinning ear to ear as he walks down the tunnel and finds out that Hibs have won as well. There's the way Scotland somehow managed to make the anthem cause hairs to stand up on the back of the neck away from home with not a single fan in the 82,000 seats at Twickenham. And then there was every beat of the 80 minutes in between. Scotland's win was a coming of age for Gregor Townsend Scotland that had been threatened for so very long. The moment every other team had to start meaning their words about always taking Scotland seriously. So, how did the Tartan tribe pull off their incredible victory 38 years in the making? And what does this mean for Eddie Jones and his plethora of outplayed pantomime villains with 4 more games to play this Six Nations? After the madcap draw the last time these two teams faced at the ground I still never have once in my life called HQ, Finn Russell said in his tones of dubious dulcicity that there had been some changing room debate between himself and head coach Gregor Townsend as to how Scotland should play. Russell wanted to run and pass everything. Townsend was stubborn and said they had to play more structural rugby if they wanted to beat England. And as is almost always the way whenever two people fight corners tooth and nail, the answer lies somewhere in between. On balance, Scotland edged closer to plan Townsend on Saturday, but far from feeling like enemy approaches, these two ideas bled seamlessly into each other and created what felt like the definitive Scottish style of play for the 21st century. Tough as an armadillo's bodyguard, with beats of flash and flair, Scotland hit a balance and played smart. I said in my preview of the Six Nations, Scotland had learned to play to an opposition's weaknesses as much as their own strengths, and on Saturday, they made those two things one and the same. If we look at the 4 games England have lost in the last 2 years and the one they drew, all of them have one thing in common. Much like the nation as a whole lately, the English rugby team is pathologically obsessed with maintaining and taking that control. And each team who managed to successfully beat Eddie Jones's White Stripes had to strip that command of the game away somehow. Everyone took a different approach. South Africa smashed them at the set piece so they couldn't launch anything. France threw everything at the opening stanza to pull 17-0 ahead. Scotland did the opposite and fell so far behind England didn't care about conceding a meaningless consolation try, then another, oh shit lads, they're ahead. Wales ran the trickiest gambit of all, giving England lots of ball and controlling the game through their defence. 4 very, very different game plans, but in all 5 games England found themselves on a tactical back foot and started to make mistakes as they desperately tried to wrestle back control of the match. Eddie Jones' England are not a team who know how to be the underdog. Even when they're not the bookies' favourites, they've played at a million miles an hour like they're expected to dominate the game. So whenever an opposition makes them have to scrap, they don't know what to do and start to tear themselves apart instead. Now, maybe the most common, well, let's not get carried away here, criticism of Scotland on Saturday was that they spent a lot of time in the opposition 22 to only come away scoring 11 points, and in there just the one try. Now, what I'm about to say is one of those kind of bullshit points where I stand by what I mean, but I hope you get it, but it's also nonsense, because obviously you always want to score more points, but Scotland's inability to score when in the 22 genuinely doesn't matter, and all those passages went pretty much exactly according to Gregor Townsend's plan. About a third of the match was spent in or just outside England's 22. Now, about 95-ish% of the time, if you're in your own 22, you're going to kick. Instead of being autonomous, playing your own way, executing your game plan, you're just reacting to the situation the opposition have put you in. This was Scotland's plan. Instead of letting Eddie and Owen play whatever they cooked up in the week, they would just make them spend as many of the allotted 80 minutes as possible reacting to whatever Scotland threw at them instead. People often use the term kicking tennis to refer to long rallies, but that term is spot on for what we saw on Saturday for different reasons. You know, in tennis, right, you want to be hitting the ball from corner to corner to manipulate and tire your opponent, so you can eventually bounce that ball past them and over the white line. Well, that's the easiest comparison, the easy way to describe how Scotland kicked on Saturday. Here, Finn Russell slides it into the right-hand corner. Daly is there, but boxed into that corner with Maitland herring down after him, so he can't really do anything but aim for the grass straight ahead of him. Hogg covers easily and unleashes a perfect spiral kick into the opposite corner, none of the England backfield able to cover across. 15 love. Here, Scotland load the short side, and so Youngs jogs up to cut off the overlap. With nobody now on that wing, Russell slides a lovely kick along the tramlines that Maitland regathers. However, Scotland knock it on, England reply box kick, and after a quick phase, Finn drops it back on the boot and into the other opposite corner. It's only a few metres, but it keeps England pinned to the 22 and forcing them for a few more frustrating minutes to react to Scotland's game plan instead of executing their own. And as a bonus, it forces Elliot Daly to run nearly sideline to sideline, touchline to touchline 3 times in 38 seconds. That'll tire and baffle any defence. 30 love. This ate away at England until they began making errors in response. Most notably, these 2 chicken-armed moments by Johnny May. The first coming after a great kick by Price that changes its trajectory just last second and drops far more suddenly than expected. And the second is just a classic cardinal sin. The first thing they teach any young boy or girl learning to catch a high ball is that you want to be running onto it forwards. Otherwise, you end up taking your eye off it to coordinate running backwards and, this happens. The first at least had a great chase by Maitland, but the second drop is literally a schoolboy error. 40 love. Match point. And so we come to the biggie. From a dropout, Farrell pumps it long, and after Hogg takes it in, Russell spots something and calls for a quick ball from Price. Except Johnny Gray has made a superb impromptu carry and gets Scotland moving forward early. Price then fires it back to Finn, who notices a quirk of how England defend from dropouts. The kicker, in this case Farrell, hangs back to cover the wing, allowing the quicker men to chase the kick. So, spotting an amateur under the high ball, Finn hangs it perfectly, this is perfect, just outside the 22, meaning Farrell can't call a mark, and hence making this a situation he can't win. Not only is the high ball Maitland's bread and butter, he's not even trying to catch it. Scotland have flooded men around Maitland, meaning he only has to tap it back, and even if Farrell beats him to it, there's 3 men there to remind him of his childhood by just twatting him hard, likely across the touchline. The deflection falls to Matt Fagerson, who carries really well, just bounces off tacklers, and the Scottish halfbacks are there right away to whip quick ball away. Russell and Redpath take out the forwards, and it leaves Anthony Watson defending the 13 channel. Knowing he's quicker than a greased up super trout, Watson figures this is fine. He's okay with Hogg fixing him perfectly, as there's no way Turner is taking him on the outside. He heads to catch up and tackle Turner, except the pass is already given. The damage is done. Instead of drifting across and covering the space, Watson focused solely on Hogg, then solely on Turner, allowing them to unleash Van der Merwe. Elliot Daly tries to give a nice hug, but Duan's just like, nah mate, now's not the time, and somehow carves his way up and over the line. Game, set, and match. Scotland. All of this led to England being unable to click it all quite together. Scotland were an entirely different prospect to what Eddie Jones was expecting, and his selections reflect that. Over the last few years, Jones developed 2 separate first-choice midfields and deploys them on a horses-for-courses basis. The first comprises of George Ford, Owen Farrell, and a big boy, traditionally Tuolangi, but this tournament with him injured is Ollie Lawrence. The second shifts Farrell to 10, Tuolangi/Lawrence to 12, with Henry Slade floating about at 13. Ford instead coming off the bench to alter the way England play as part of a big tactical calculation. Each has their strengths, and Jones selects based on what he expects the opposition to bring. To oversimplify it, ball in hand, Ford Farrell looks to break the opposition down over 10 and 15 phases, its patience and precision, whereas Farrell Slade is more about quick strike plays and dangerous running, whilst kicking in the first plan is chase and compete. In the second, they're using Slade's big left boot to complement Farrell and Ford's right-footedness, tactically now focused on putting pressure on the opposition than regathering themselves. Jones figured the way to beat Scotland was to put pressure on them and then to unleash some big carriers and nice handling moves, and they'd be powerless to stop it. But Scotland were a far tougher and better rounded well-rounded prospect. The Russell-Townsend hybrid playing a tactical blinder whilst bolstered by a pack who could more than match England. And whenever they were slightly short in power, Scotland made up for it by plotting, planning and thinking up an alternative to overcome the shortfall. To give you an example, right, here's both sides on an early excursion in the 22 looking to run a crash ball in order to cross that line and generate momentum for what they're about to do next. Here's Scotland's move. Scott Cummins takes the ball from a line out of Toje, Curry and Stewart set to defend the maul at the front, but Cummins drops it down to Gray. The other England forwards realising, oh, this is where Scotland are going to set the maul, look to fix on to Gray. Gray instead offloads to Price, who fixes Jamie George, the only forward not falling for the plan. He has both Duan van der Merwe and Redpath running opposing lines off him, and Russell, the distributor, in the middle. Price drops it off to Redpath, who explodes back into the space behind the line-out where the English forward are tied into the dummy maul. He rides the tackle of Farrell, carrying him away from the rest of the English backline to disorganise them, as van der Merwe steps in to carry second, whilst the Scottish forwards are all wrapping around to find position. Now here's England's move. They pass to Billy Vunipola. That's it, that's the move. Ollie Lawrence tripped over in the background as well, just to feel included, bless him. Call it complacency, arrogance, over-reliance on key individuals who weren't performing, a combination of all of the above. But Eddie Jones saying afterwards he didn't prepare his team correctly, mate, was not spin or a coach protecting his players, mate. Jones planned to play his interpretation of a Scotland side, mate, rather than the team who those watching closely could see building over the autumn. He got it wrong, mate, and that allowed Scotland to put their foot firmly in the hold, mate. And it didn't help that the Farrell Slade England is so set to play protocol above all else. This 7-on-2 kind of went viral, a lot of people talked about it on Twitter, and whilst considering the way Scotland defend, I don't think this would have won England anything more than maybe 15 metres, but it doesn't change the fact that Farrell's kick is terrible. It's really bad, and hands what little control England had right back to Hogg. Here, Billy Vunipola is knocked backwards, the pass goes awry, but Farrell is so stuck in playing the agreed move, he blind chucks it through his legs to fulfill his role. Owen Farrell, at this moment in time, might be the single most coachable player on the planet. At the point at which he crosses the pitch, he's more a skill set and a haircut than a human being, but sometimes that backfires when the team is not correctly prepared, mate. It's then telling that the only real time England did manage to pull something that might break down Scotland's Steve Tandy defence to any degree comes right after Ford takes over at 10 and starts playing his way. Except after calling out the back, the man he calls on to distribute for the second pass kind of happens to be Johnny May in his spare time, so the whole thing falls apart until eventually Cameron Redpath turns the ball over, winning the penalty that Hogg eventually takes a long-range shot from. Look, I could go on talking about how shoddy England were. Billy Vunipola looked every bit the player whose last game was a loss against Ealing Trailfinders, and his colleague in the number 7 shirt was so ineffective and displayed such little knowledge of the laws of rugby union, you wondered whether England had fielded Tim Curry by mistake. But, right, that's all beside the point, because this was Scotland's first win over England in Twickenham in 38 years, and I don't know about you, but I think it's time for a platitudinous jamboree of Caledonian cajolery. Picking around the match would be almost as difficult as an iconic moment, but for me, that honour belonged to one Mr. Johnny Gray. He's always a tackle stat colossus, but Saturday was something special. Such a clean source of line-up ball, a pest on England's throw, and constantly making well-timed carries, each time finding a way to wriggle an extra few metres than you'd expect. I had to wonder if this was the best I've ever seen him play. But look, there were almost endless other contenders. I've talked a lot about Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg, but both were brilliant. Hogg in particular gave an inch-perfect fullback performance. Ali Price's day might be best remembered for the 2 charge downs by Mara Toje, but beyond the fact that this one's kind of more in Santa Vegas of not offering any kind of competent protection, he was excellent in all other facets of the game. He was really good in a way I didn't quite pay attention to the second time round. I want to pay particular tribute to the way he and Hogg managed the Simbin period after Russ reminded us why he's not the Messiah. Losing your 10 is a situation that sends many teams under, but Price instead just calmly took charge. The temptation is to just hit up runners near the ruck. Price varied their play and options in attack really nicely. He maintained a semblance of deception despite not having intended to run things, and the wider team played their part. Ferguson here making amends by finally getting a block in and opening up this hole for Hogg to attack right after half time. To set it just in England mind that Scotland were going to attack. They weren't going to settle for just running the clock down whilst Finn was off. So, what did Price do next? Yeah, he ran the clock down. Curry here gives away another dumb penalty. Scotland take age of the decision, but they know the whole time they're not eating up 1 minute by taking a speculative shot. They kick for the corner to just eat England's brains instead. They played the most basic, simple, conservative rugby. England knowing they're going to need to soak up this for minutes. I don't know if they do turn it over, like they take took 45 seconds to clear it, and there'll be a line that's got to set, and the entire time, Proud Eddie's Army aware their power play with Russell off the field is just about to disappear without them firing a single shot. Frustrating them further, control is gone. The safety first play continues until Scotland draw the penalty. The split-second advantage is called. Price bursts into life, throwing a wide ball to Hogg that skips 3 forwards and catches England completely off guard. Ferguson as well, but if this is Van der Merwe, you wonder if he might have scored a second try. Anyway, the stellar performances continue. Cam Redpath, right? This was his first touch of Test rugby, the first touch of his first cap. And he remained outstanding minute to minute, almost looking like the exact centre Gregor Townsend would have grown if given free rein over an evil lab. Matt Ferguson may have had his best game in the Scotland shirt, whilst George Turner proved the worries over an injury crisis at hooker have been way over-exaggerated. And then we have the Mish. I don't know what Hamish Watson is made of, because he seems to alternate between being a creature of titanium and a ball of rubber. He was phenomenal, but even better than that performance was the fact that we just got to see all varieties of Mish antics on Saturday. The classic throw-offs are always a favourite, and I'm yet to watch this tackle Elliot Daly back with... Does Daly still have him back? Have we checked? Can they do back transplant? Is that a thing? Is that medically possible? If that happened to me, my spine would shit itself and leave. I just not have a spine. Daly's going to play rugby again next week. Why is he going to do that? Christ. He decided to take the bullying of his mate, poor wee Ali, into his own hands here by spotting a Toje lurking on the left to charge him down a third time. So Mish drags him in and engages him on the right-hand side of the ruck, meaning he can't get to Price's kicking foot in order to hit him. Watson almost crossed the try line. He finished only behind Gray as Scotland's top tackler, and then we have his work at the breakdown. This is the last minute, the final play. Instead of putting himself in the main defensive line, Watson he lurks just behind, watching, waiting, and then he spots a turnover chance. Not needing to come from the main line, he's able to get in through the gate cleanly, and Gray drops Laws to ground in such a manner the ball is as far away from his teammates as it could be. There's an argument he doesn't give Laws long enough to present the ball, but A, playing open side is all about getting away with cheating, so he's done brilliantly. B, both Curry and Hill fly on the side of the ruck anyway, so tomato. The takeaway? Well, it's the ball, and with it, the game. Mish kicking the ball out like he's never even realised he had feet before is a contender for the match's most iconic moment. But I think instead, that honour has to go to what it gave us. In a Six Nations without crowds, it's more important than ever that we're sat watching, taken in by the tension and tenacity on the screen before us. My cheer for the turnover and cheer for the final whistle were separated by the closest person to me telling me to shush for fear of popping an eardrum, but that didn't stop so many of us out there from doing that anyway. This was the first Scotland win in Twickenham for 38 years, and for all we know, you hate to say it and you hope it won't be, but it could be another 38 before they do it again. The Six Nations is all about passion, community, shouting and screaming, and for all we saw on ITV Saturday evening, the true lasting image of Scotland's historic win over England at Twickenham in 2021 will be these. It's what went on in our homes, our houses, the countries brought together, cheering together, at a time in which we were all being kept apart. 82,000 seats might have been kept empty, but as Hamish Watson kicked that ball out and everyone outside England erupted, we could not have been any closer together. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it, but especially thank you to Jamie Lyle, to Adam Sheehy, Jordan Hope, Devon Moffat and Joe McQuaid, to Gulliver Goodall, to Calder Watt, to Angus Robson, to Michael and to Stephen Main, who are the people that posted those videos on social media of them reacting, or their family, friends, loved ones, whoever, reacting to the Scotland win. An enormous thank you, and if you've got any yourself, then please send them my way, either tweet them to me. I'm trying to curate a definitive thread of this, or email them to squidgerugby@gmail.com, and I want to try and upload them and put as many together as possible. And yeah, so thank you to everyone that's been sending those to me over the last few days as well. It's been an enormous source of joy. They make me very happy. Speaking of things that hopefully make people happy, Wales Island will be next. I'll be trying to cover that before there's more rugby played. There's a video on France Italy elsewhere on the channel, and I've also got a preview of the opening, or the second round rather, of this year's Six Nations, which I've done in the format of the podcast I've been doing with my brother. That's going up for Patreons exclusively later today. So that's all coming, that's all going out. There's plenty going on. Six Nations very busy, and I'll see you probably tomorrow, maybe Saturday morning for Wales Island. See you then. Finn Russell in the sin bin, in Hamish Watson's coat. The cheeky prick.